after a hit and run left me with massive medical debt. My parents refused to help and told me to figure it out. Years later, when they hit rock bottom and called me for money, I gave them the same advice. The accident happened on a Tuesday morning in October. One moment I was crossing the street on my way to work. The next I was lying on the pavement with a shattered leg and a driver speeding away. The hidden drum left me with 3 fractures, a dislocated hip, and medical bills that would soon climb past 6 figures. I was 26 years old, working as a junior accountant at a mid-size firm in Philadelphia. My salary was decent but modest, and my savings account held maybe $4,000. The emergency room visit alone cost more than I made in a month. As I lay in the hospital bed drifting in and out of consciousness from the pain medication, my first thought was that my parents would help me through this nightmare. How wrong I was. My mother arrived at the hospital within 2 hours of receiving my call. She cried when she saw me, held my hand, told me everything would be okay. My father came after work, his face creased with concern. They stayed until visiting hours ended, promising to return the next day. During those first 72 hours, they seemed genuinely worried. They asked the doctors questions. They brought me clean clothes. They sat beside my bed while I tried to process what had happened to my life. The surgeon explained that I would need 2 operations, extensive physical therapy, and at least 4 months away from work. My insurance would cover some costs, but the deductible was $12,000. And there would be countless expenses beyond that: mobility aids, home modifications, prescription medications, and therapy sessions that insurance deemed unnecessary, but my body desperately needed. 3 days after the accident, I had the conversation that would change everything. My father sat in the chair beside my hospital bed, while my mother stood near the window. I had spent the morning calculating numbers in my head, trying to figure out how I could possibly manage this financial disaster. My voice shook as I asked them for help. "We just don't have the money," my father said, not quite meeting my eyes. "You know we're not wealthy people. We've got our own expenses, the house, retirement to think about." My mother nodded along, her hands twisting together. "Honey, we wish we could help, but we're stretched thin as it is. You're going to have to figure this out on your own. Maybe take out a loan." I felt something crack inside my chest that had nothing to do with my physical injuries. These were the people who had raised me, who had told me family always came first, who had preached about loyalty and love. Yet here they were telling me I was on my own during the worst crisis of my life. "What about that money Grandma Ruth left you?" I asked quietly. My grandmother had passed away 2 years earlier, leaving my parents a substantial inheritance. They had been careful not to discuss the exact amount, but I knew it was significant. My father's jaw tightened. "That money is for our future security. We can't just throw it away on medical bills." Throw it away? As if helping their daughter was equivalent to burning cash. I was discharged 5 days later with a walker, a bottle of pain pills, and instructions for follow-up appointments I had no idea how to pay for. My parents drove me home to my apartment, helped me inside, and left within 20 minutes. My mother kissed my forehead and told me to call if I needed anything. But we both knew what she really meant. Call if you need emotional support, not money. The next 3 months were the hardest of my life. I couldn't work, couldn't drive, could barely make it from my bedroom to the bathroom without exhausting myself. I applied for short-term disability, which gave me a fraction of my normal income. I set up payment plans with the hospital and surgery center, agreeing to terms that would keep me in debt for years. I ate rice and canned soup because groceries required money I didn't have. My friends helped when they could. My colleague Jessica brought me meals twice a week. My neighbor Mrs. Hoffman checked on me daily. But my parents, they called once every week or two, brief conversations where they asked how I was feeling and then quickly changed the subject when I tried to discuss my financial situation. Physical therapy was brutal both on my body and my bank account. Each session cost $90 after insurance, and I needed 3 sessions per week. I did the math and realized I couldn't afford to heal properly. I started skipping sessions, trying to do the exercises at home using printouts and YouTube videos. My therapist, a kind woman named Diane, noticed my absences and called me out on it. "You're sabotaging your recovery," she said bluntly during one appointment. "If you don't do this right, you'll have permanent damage." "I can't afford to do this right," I replied, hating how my voice broke. She reduced her rate for me after that, cutting it almost in half and doing it quietly so her supervisor wouldn't find out. That act of kindness from a near stranger meant more to me than anything my own family had done. 4 months after the accident, I was back at work on modified duty. I could walk with a cane now, though my hips still ached constantly, and stairs remained a significant challenge. I threw myself into my job with ferocious intensity, volunteering for every extra project and working late whenever possible. My supervisor noticed my dedication and started assigning me more complex accounts. I had coffee with my mother one Saturday in February, 6 months post-accident. We met at a cafe near her house, and I noticed immediately that she seemed distracted, almost giddy. She kept checking her phone and smiling at the screen. "What's going on?" I asked, stirring sugar into my coffee. Her eyes lit up. "Oh, honey, we have such exciting news. Your sister is getting a house." I sat down my spoon carefully. My sister Natalie was 23, fresh out of college, and working as a marketing assistant. "That's great. She must have saved up quite a bit." My mother laughed. "Oh no, we're buying it for her. Your father and I found the most adorable place in Cherry Hill. 3 bedrooms, beautiful yard, updated kitchen." Natalie fell in love with it immediately. The world seemed to tilt sideways. "You're buying her a house." "Well, she's getting married next year, and we want to help her start her life right. Trevor is such a nice young man, and they deserve a solid foundation." She reached across the table to pat my hand. "Oh, don't look like that. You'll find someone too eventually." My hand was shaking so hard I had to put down my coffee cup. "How much does this house cost?" $275,000. "It's a steal, honestly, given the market. We're so lucky we found it." $275,000. They were spending nearly $300,000 on my sister while I was still drowning in debt from an accident that had nearly killed me. While I had eaten rice for weeks because I couldn't afford real groceries. While I had skipped necessary medical appointments because the copays were too high. "I needed help," I said quietly. 6 months ago, I was broken and scared, and I needed help. You told me you didn't have money." My mother's smile faded. "That's different. Medical bills are just throwing money into a black hole. A house is an investment. It's building equity, creating stability." "I see." I stood up, leaning heavily on my cane. "Thanks for the coffee, Mom." "Honey, don't be like this. You're being dramatic." I walked out without responding. I didn't trust myself to say anything that wouldn't permanently damage our relationship, even though I was starting to wonder if the relationship was worth preserving. That evening, I received a group text from Natalie with photos of her new house. My parents had already closed on it, surprising her with the keys. The message was full of exclamation points and heart emojis, thanking Mom and Dad for being the most generous, amazing parents in the world. I deleted the message without responding. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. My hips throbbed as usual, a constant reminder of what I'd endured, but my mind felt sharp and focused. I made coffee in my tiny kitchen, standing at the counter because sitting and standing still caused pain, and I made a decision that would shape the rest of my life. I was done waiting for my parents to become the people I needed them to be. That week, I opened a new bank account at a different institution. I wanted my finances completely separate from anything connected to my old life. I created a spreadsheet tracking every dollar I owed, every payment plan, every outstanding bill. The total was staggering $78,000 even after insurance. But seeing it laid out in black and white made it feel manageable somehow, like an enemy I could face head-on rather than a shapeless monster lurking in the shadows. I researched side hustles and found a company that needed remote bookkeeping help for small businesses. The work was tedious and the pay wasn't spectacular, but I could do it from my couch in the evenings. I signed up for 3 clients initially, working from 8 at night until midnight after I'd already put in a full day at my regular job. My body protested. My hips screamed at me for sitting so long. My back developed new aches. I lived on ibuprofen and stubbornness. Jessica noticed the dark circles under my eyes during a lunch break one afternoon. We sat in the break room and she studied me with concern etched across her face. "You're working yourself into the ground," she said bluntly. "I can see it. Whatever you're doing, it's not sustainable." "I'm paying off medical debt," I replied, stirring my yogurt without much appetite. "It's temporary. Once I'm clear of this, I can ease up." "How much debt are we talking about?" I told her. Her expression shifted from concern to alarm. "Have you asked your parents for help? I know that's not ideal, but surely they'd rather help you than watch you destroy your health." I laughed and it came out bitter. "They've made their position clear. I'm on my own." Jessica reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Ben, you're not alone. A few of us from work want to help. We're planning a fundraiser." "No." The word came out harsher than I intended. "I appreciate it, I really do. But I need to do this myself. I need to prove that I can." She looked like she wanted to argue but ultimately nodded. "Okay. But if you change your mind, the offer stands." I didn't change my mind. Pride might be a sin, but it was also the fuel keeping me going. My sister called me 2 weeks after the house announcement. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Hey! Natalie's voice was bright and cheerful. I wanted to thank you personally for the congratulations text you definitely didn't send. She laughed at her own joke. I know we haven't talked much lately, but I really want you to see the house. Maybe you could visit next weekend. I'm working, I said automatically. On a weekend? Come on, take one day off. Mom and Dad will be there too. We're doing a whole family thing, grilling out, showing off the place. It'll be fun. The thought of watching my parents being with pride over Natalie's new house while I could barely afford my rent made my stomach turn. I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? Are you mad about something? The innocence in her question nearly broke me. She genuinely had no idea. To her, our parents had simply made a generous gift. She didn't know about my hospital bills or their refusal to help. Why would she? I had been too ashamed to tell her. I'm not mad. I lied. I'm just busy. New job responsibilities, side work, physical therapy. My schedule is packed. You're always busy lately. I feel like I never see you anymore. That's what happens when you're trying to survive, I said, and immediately regretted the edge in my voice. A pause. Is everything okay? Like really okay? Everything's fine. I have to go. Congrats on the house. I ended the call before she could press further. That evening, I sat in my apartment and let myself cry for the first time since the accident. Not from physical pain, though that was present as always, but from the sheer exhaustion of pretending everything was fine. I cried for the relationship I thought I had with my parents. I cried for the sister who didn't know how much our parents' favoritism had cost me. I cried for the version of myself who had trusted that family meant something. Then I dried my tears, ate a can of soup for dinner, and logged into my evening bookkeeping work. Something hardened in me after that day. I realized my parents had made a choice about which daughter they valued more, and I had lost that competition. But I also realized something else. I didn't need them. I had survived the worst period of my life with almost no support from them, which meant I could survive anything. I threw myself into building a life they had no part in. I worked longer hours, took night classes for additional certifications, and aggressively pursued every opportunity for advancement. When my company offered a position in their New York office 18 months after my accident, I took it without hesitation. The job came with a 30% salary increase and a signing bonus that finally allowed me to clear most of my remaining medical debt. I moved to Manhattan in August, informing my parents via text message 3 days before I left. My mother called immediately heard that I hadn't discussed such a major decision with them. I pointed out that I was 28 years old and didn't need their permission for career choices. She said I was being cold. I didn't disagree. The move itself was chaotic but liberating. I hired movers for my furniture and spent 2 days packing up everything I owned. Standing in my empty Philadelphia apartment for the last time, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. This city held nothing but painful memories and financial struggle. New York represented possibility. My new apartment in Manhattan was a tiny studio in Murray Hill, barely 400 square feet, but the rent was manageable with my new salary. I could walk to work on good days, though I still relied on my cane when my hip acted up. The city's energy invigorated me. Nobody stared at my limp here. Nobody knew my story. I was just another transplant trying to make it. My first week at the new firm was intense. They threw complex accounts at me, immediately testing my capabilities. I worked 12-hour days learning their systems, proving I deserved the position. My supervisor, a sharp woman named Patricia, watched me carefully during those initial weeks. "You work like someone with something to prove," she commented one evening when we were both still in the office at 8. "Doesn't everyone?" I replied, not looking up from my spreadsheet. "Most people work for a paycheck. You work like you're running from something." She closed her laptop and studied me. "Just make sure you're also running towards something." Her words stuck with me. Was I running from my family or toward a better life? Maybe both could be true simultaneously. I settled into a routine. Wake at 6:00 gym for physical therapy exercises that I'd finally learned to do consistently, work until 7 or 8, then home to a microwave dinner and Netflix. Weekends, I explored the city, discovering neighborhoods and museums and coffee shops. I was lonely sometimes, but it felt like a clean loneliness, uncomplicated by resentment and disappointment. 3 months into my New York life, my father called. We hadn't spoken since I'd moved, just exchanged a few text messages. "Your mother wants you to come home for Thanksgiving," he said without preamble. "I'm working." I lied. I had actually requested the holiday off. "No, you're not. I called your old firm before I remembered you'd switched jobs. Look, I know you're angry about the whole house situation, but Natalie really wants to host Thanksgiving this year. She's excited to show everyone the place. Of course she was. I'll think about it. That means no. He sighed heavily. What do we have to do to fix this? Your mother is beside herself. She doesn't understand why you're shutting us out. Then she's not paying attention. I kept my voice level professional, the same tone I used with difficult clients. I needed help during the hardest time of my life. You both made it clear I wasn't a priority. Now I'm simply adjusting my expectations accordingly. We never said you weren't a priority. You didn't have to say it. You bought Natalie a house while I was still drowning in medical debt. Actions speak louder than words. Dad, you taught me that. This is about money. We can give you some money if that's what you need to get over this. The offer was so insulting I almost hung up. I don't need your money anymore. I needed your support 2 years ago. The time for financial help has passed. Now I just need you to accept that our relationship isn't what you think it should be. You're our daughter and you're my parents, but that's biology, not destiny. Plenty of people have parents they're not close to. I'm just being honest about where we stand. He was quiet for a long moment. Will you at least think about Thanksgiving? I'll think about it, I repeated, knowing I wouldn't change my mind. I spent Thanksgiving alone in my studio apartment, eating Thai takeout and watching movies. Jessica, who had also moved to New York for a different opportunity, invited me to her family celebration in New Jersey, but I declined. I wasn't ready to pretend to be cheerful or explain my family situation to strangers. My phone buzzed with messages throughout the day. A photo from Natalie showing the Thanksgiving spread at her new house. A text from my mother saying they miss me. Nothing from my father, which somehow felt more honest than the others. I sent a generic Happy Thanksgiving to the family group chat and muted the conversation. December brought year-end chaos at work and my first real test at the new firm. One of our major clients had a tax situation that needed immediate attention, complicated by multiple state filings and potential penalties. I volunteered to take the lead, spending 2 weeks essentially living at the office, surviving on coffee and determination. When I successfully resolved the issue, saving the client over $200,000 in penalties, Patricia called me into her office. That was impressive work, she said, gesturing for me to sit. You're sharp, dedicated, and you don't give up when things get complicated. How would you feel about taking on more high-value clients? I feel great about that, I said, trying to contain my excitement. Good, because we're moving you to the wealth management division. Significant pay bump, more complex work, and honestly, you'll fit better there. You have the right instincts for it. The promotion came through in January with a salary increase that made my old pay look like pocket change. I moved into a better apartment in Brooklyn, one with actual separate rooms and space for a real dining table. I bought new furniture instead of accepting hand-me-downs. I framed art for my walls and invested in quality cookware I was too tired to use most nights. My life was coming together in ways I'd never imagined during those dark months after the accident. New York was exactly what I needed. Nobody there knew about my accident or my family drama. I was just another ambitious professional trying to make it in an expensive, competitive city. I loved the anonymity of it. My career took off in ways I hadn't imagined possible. Within a year, I was promoted to senior accountant. 2 years after that, I made manager. By my 33rd birthday, I was pulling in a 6-figure salary and had been headhunted by a prestigious firm that specialized in high-net-worth individuals and corporate accounts. I bought myself a condo in Brooklyn with views of the Manhattan skyline. It wasn't huge, but it was mine. Purchased with money I had earned through my own determination. The day I got the keys, I stood in the empty living room and cried. Not because I was sad, but because I had done something I once thought impossible. My relationship with my parents became perfunctory. We exchanged texts on birthdays and holidays. I visited Philadelphia once a year, usually around Thanksgiving, staying exactly one night before inventing an excuse to leave. These visits were strained affairs where we made small talk about weather and current events while carefully avoiding any real topics. Natalie and I maintained a surface-level relationship, though the warmth that had once existed between us was gone. She had no idea that I resented her, and I saw no point in enlightening her. It wasn't her fault our parents had chosen favorites. She posted regularly on social media about her perfect life, her handsome husband, her beautiful house, her adorable golden retriever named Bailey. Meanwhile, I was quietly building wealth. I invested aggressively, maxed out my retirement accounts, and built an emergency fund that could sustain me for 2 years if necessary. Never again would I be vulnerable the way I had been after the accident. Never again would I need to ask anyone for help. 6 years after moving to New York, I received a partnership offer from my firm. I was 34 years old, one of the youngest partners in the company's history. The achievement came with a substantial salary increase, profit sharing, and the kind of professional respect I had once only dreamed about. I texted my parents the news. My mother responded, "That's wonderful, honey, we're so proud." My father sent a thumbs up emoji. Natalie called me genuinely excited. "This is amazing. You're killing it. We should celebrate when you visit next." Maybe I said non-committally. Life continued its upward trajectory. I traveled extensively for work, visiting Tokyo, London, Dubai, and Singapore. I maintained a small but close circle of friends in New York. I dated occasionally, though nothing serious developed, which suited me fine. I was content with my independence. Then 3 months ago, my mother called with news that shattered their carefully maintained facade of financial security. "Your father lost his job," she said, her voice tight with stress. "The company downsized. He's been looking for months, but nobody wants to hire someone his age. My father was 61, 3 years from his planned retirement. That's rough. I'm sure something will come up. It's worse than that." She paused, and I could hear her breathing shakily. "We have some debt. Credit cards mostly. The house needs major repairs. The roof is leaking. The furnace died last month. And we found out there's water damage in the basement that's going to cost $40,000 to fix properly." I waited, saying nothing. "We were wondering if you could help us out. Just temporarily until your father finds something. Maybe $15,000 or $20,000 to get us through the immediate crisis." The irony was so thick, I almost laughed. "You want me to give you money? Loan us money?" she corrected quickly. "We'll pay you back as soon as we're back on our feet, like you loaned me money when I was lying in a hospital bed with a shattered leg." Silence stretched between us. When she finally spoke, her voice was defensive. "That was different. You were young. You could recover financially. We're approaching retirement age. We don't have time to rebuild." "I see. So when I needed help, I was young enough to suffer. But now that you need help, you're too old to struggle." Interesting logic. "Don't be cruel," my mother said sharply. "We're your parents. Family helps family." "You're absolutely right. Family should help family. You taught me that lesson very clearly 8 years ago." "We did what we could," she insisted. "We weren't as financially comfortable then." "Stop lying." My voice came out harder than I intended. "I know about Grandma Ruth's inheritance. I know you had money when I needed help. You chose to save it for yourselves instead of helping your daughter who couldn't walk." She made a small sound, something between a gasp and a sob. "We had to think long-term. We had to be smart about our future, and I didn't. I had to figure out how to survive with a broken body and no savings. I had to choose between physical therapy and groceries. I had to work through pain that made me vomit because I couldn't afford to take time off." "Where was the family loyalty then?" "Please," she whispered. "We made mistakes, but we're desperate now. Your father is talking about selling the house. We might have to move in with Aunt Paula." "Then move in with Aunt Paula. Or better yet, ask Natalie for help. Maybe she can take out a home equity loan on that house you bought her. Natalie and Trevor are struggling too. He got laid off last year and they're trying to start a family. They can't help us, but I can." It wasn't a question. "Yes, you're successful. You have money. Surely you can spare something for your parents." I looked out my office window at the Manhattan skyline, thinking about how far I had come from that hospital room. I could spare it. I could write you a check right now that would solve all your immediate problems. I'm a partner at one of the most prestigious accounting firms in the country. Money isn't my primary concern anymore. Hope crept into her voice. "Then you'll help." "No." The word hung in the air like a guillotine blade. "What do you mean, no?" "We're your parents, and I was your daughter. You made a choice 8 years ago about what kind of relationship we would have. You chose money over my well-being. You chose comfort over compassion. You chose Natalie over me. Those were your decisions, and they have consequences. We never chose her over you." My mother protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "You bought her a house for $275,000 while I was still paying off medical debt from an accident that nearly crippled me. You told me you had no money to help me, then spent hundreds of thousands on her. What would you call that?" She started crying. "We were trying to help her start her marriage, right? We wanted to give her a good foundation. I needed a foundation. I needed my parents. Instead, I got voicemail and lectures about personal responsibility. So I built my own foundation without you, and now you want to stand on it. You're being vindictive and petty. I'm being honest. You want me to save you from financial hardship after you refuse to save me." You want me to be the family member you never were to me. My father got on the line then. I hadn't realized he was listening. Your mother and I did the best we could with the information we had. We're not perfect, but we're still your parents. You owe us respect. I don't owe you anything, I said calmly. You made that clear when I was 26 and terrified. I'm simply returning the favor. If you don't help us, we'll lose everything, he said, his voice breaking. Is that what you want? To watch your parents become homeless out of spite? I don't want anything. I'm simply declining to solve a problem that isn't mine, just like you declined to help with mine. We raised you, my mother said desperately. We fed you, clothed. You put a roof over your head for 18 years. Doesn't that count for something? That's called being a parent. You don't get extra credit for meeting the minimum requirements of raising a child. And frankly, if you're keeping score, I'd say we're even. You gave me 18 years of basic care. I gave you 8 years of pretending I didn't resent you. We're square. Please, my father said, we're begging you. Those words should have moved me. They should have awakened some daughterly instinct to help my parents in their time of need. But all I felt was a cold satisfaction that they finally understood what it felt like to need help and have it denied. Here's what I'll do, I said. I'll give you the same advice you gave me. Figure it out on your own. Take out a loan, sell things, get creative. You're resourceful people. I'm sure you'll manage. You've become hard, my mother said. Her voice filled with disappointment. I've become independent. You forced that on me, and now you're unhappy with the result, but that's not my problem to solve. I ended the call. The next few days brought a barrage of messages from various family members. Aunt Paula called to tell me I was being unreasonable. Uncle Dennis sent a long email about forgiveness and family bonds. Even Natalie reached out asking me to reconsider to be the bigger person. I responded to Natalie with a simple question. Are you giving them money? She replied that she and Trevor were living paycheck to paycheck, that they couldn't afford to help. Then you understand my position perfectly, I wrote back. My parents tried everything. They sent me nostalgic photos from my childhood. They reminded me of family vacations and Christmas mornings. They even had my grandmother's elderly sister call to guilt-trip me about family loyalty. I remained unmoved. 2 weeks after my mother's initial call, my father sent me a text. We're selling the house. We'll be moving into a small apartment across town. I hope you can live with yourself. I could. In fact, I slept better than I had in years. Here's what my parents never understood. This wasn't about the money. If they had helped me 8 years ago and then later fallen on hard times, I would have moved mountains to support them. But they had shown me that their love was conditional, that their support had limits, that I ranked below my sister in their hierarchy of care. They had taught me that family loyalty was a one-way street, and they were shocked to discover I had learned the lesson too well. Last week, I received a letter from my mother, not an email or text, but an actual handwritten letter mailed to my apartment. In it, she apologized for how they had handled my accident. She admitted they had been scared and selfish. She confessed that they had indeed had money they could have used to help me, but they had convinced themselves that I would be fine, that I was young and capable. The letter was 3 pages long, filled with regret and justifications and pleas for understanding. She ended by saying that even though I wouldn't help them financially, she hoped we could repair our relationship. She said she missed her daughter. I read the letter twice, then filed it away in my desk drawer. Maybe someday I'll be ready to rebuild a relationship with my parents. Maybe when I'm 40 or 50, I'll have processed enough of my anger to engage with them genuinely. But that day isn't today, and it won't be tomorrow. Right now, I'm 34 years old with a career I'm proud of, financial security. I've built myself and a life that belongs entirely to me. I'm planning a trip to New Zealand next month. I'm mentoring junior accountants at my firm. I'm attending gallery openings and theater performances and making memories that have nothing to do with a family that failed me. My parents wanted my help, but they can't afford my forgiveness. Just like I couldn't afford their indifference 8 years ago. The difference is I survived without them. I thrived without them. They'll have to do the same. I don't feel guilty about this decision. I don't lie awake at night wondering if I'm being too harsh, because every time doubt creeps in, I remember lying in that hospital bed frightened and in pain, asking my parents for help and being told I was on my own. They taught me self-sufficiency. They taught me that when life breaks you down, you either build yourself back up or you don't survive. They taught me that love isn't guaranteed even from the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally. Those were harsh lessons, but I learned them well. Now they're learning their own lessons about consequences and accountability. They're discovering what it feels like to need someone who doesn't need you back. They're experiencing the cold reality of making choices that can't be unmade. Some people might call me heartless for refusing to help my parents in their time of need. Those people didn't watch their parents drive away from a hospital without offering any real support. They didn't spend months wondering if they would ever walk normally again while counting pennies for pain medication. They didn't receive photos of a house their parents bought for their sibling while they were still paying off medical bills. I built a life without my parents' help. I recovered, succeeded, and created stability through my own efforts. Their crisis isn't my responsibility, just as my crisis wasn't theirs. That's the lesson they taught me. And unlike them, I actually learned it. My phone sits silent now. The desperate calls and messages have stopped. I imagine my parents in their new apartment, smaller and less comfortable than the home they raised us in, dealing with the consequences of their choices. I imagine them wondering where they went wrong, why their successful daughter won't save them. The answer is simple. I already saved myself once. I don't have the energy to save them too. Some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt. Some trust once broken can't be repaired. Some relationships once damaged aren't worth the effort of mending. My parents wanted the version of me that would forgive and forget, that would rush to their aid despite how they treated me. But that version of me died in a hospital room 8 years ago when they chose themselves over their injured daughter. The version of me that survived is harder, stronger, and far less willing to sacrifice herself for people who wouldn't do the same. They can't afford my forgiveness, and honestly, I can't afford to give it.